Leaders from China's ruling Communist Party are gathering to discuss Beijing's economic development plan, with the party set to undergo its highest turnover in 8 years. For more, we're joined by the Wall Street Journal's China Bureau Chief, Jonathan Cheng. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Now, this meeting is to finalise the 5-year plan for China's economic future. What do we know about the priorities outlined?
Yeah, so you're right. This is a 5-year plan. The Communist Party likes to plan in long-term chunks here. And, actually, it's the sort of thing that was very out of fashion in the West, but you see a lot of countries in the West now looking at China, looking at what it's done in terms of high-end technology and thinking, well, maybe this isn't such a bad idea. 5 years ago, you saw China come out and say, we want to really prioritize technological self-sufficiency. And I think when you look at what they've done with artificial intelligence, semiconductors, electric vehicles, solar panels, rare earth minerals, you can see just how much they have accomplished here. And I don't think we're going to see a huge deviation from that going forward, because I think from Xi Jinping's point of view, I think what they're doing so far is working. And I expect that they'll probably reaffirm that and perhaps project that again further into the future.
So that's key, again, pouring resources into technology and innovation. Why is China so focused on this area?
Well, obviously, you can see that with this trade war between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, the Chinese have really got a very powerful weapon here with the rare earth minerals. You see that with Prime Minister Albanese's visit to Washington and how much of a priority that was for the U.S. And this was something that China cultivated over many, many years. They really made it a priority to do this, and they went out and did it. So for one thing, I think they can see that it really works in the geopolitical chess match that they have against the West. But also, it also obviously generates new industries like electric vehicles. And of course, many of these things like semiconductors, artificial intelligence, have military applications, which is obvious. I think China does foresee the chances of conflict perhaps rising in the years to come and wants to make sure it's well positioned for that.
And Jonathan, prior to this meeting, there was a shock announcement of sorts, a purge of 9 generals. Who were these people and why were they let go?
Sure, actually, their fates had already sort of been expected in that they had disappeared for several months. The only question was what was going to be their fate. Were they going to get off easy, or were things going to be quite bad for them? And I think we now know that the result is quite bad for them. These are very, very senior military officials. In fact, they're ones that Xi Jinping himself had put into place a few years ago. Ostensibly, the reason is corruption, and I don't think there's anyone who doubts that there is a significant corruption in the Chinese military. But nonetheless, to have them be put into place by Xi Jinping and then removed in such a fashion a few years later, I think does raise a lot of questions about the state of China's military, about Xi Jinping and how he wants to manage his senior lieutenants. And ultimately, I think we just have a lot more questions than answers here, but we may get some answers when we see what he decides to do in terms of filling these vacancies that are now there. Is he going to put other people in that perhaps he sort of parachutes in that are loyalists to him, or are people coming up slowly and so on? So I think we'll all be watching very closely to see what they say.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump says he'll meet with Xi Jinping at the APEC summit in South Korea next week. What might we expect from this meeting if it does go ahead?
Well, ever since Donald Trump came to office earlier this year, of course, we've seen China and the U.S. get to these points now where tariffs or threats of tariffs are so high on either side that you start to worry for the global economy. Then they get together and they let some of that tension out of the room. They maybe don't resolve everything, but at least they pull back from the edge. I think that's really all that we're hoping for this time around, that they're able to walk back from the edge, because I don't think the U.S., I don't think China, I don't think the rest of the world wants to see the 2 largest economies in the world putting these unsustainable tariffs on one another.
Now, back to this, these planning meetings. What impact do these have on the rest of the world? These 5-year plans.
Well, again, I mean, it shows that when it comes to long-term planning, Beijing, they don't have to worry about elections in the same way that Australia or the United States has to worry about this. They can have someone like Xi Jinping, who's now been in power for 12 years or so and may have many more ahead. We don't know. But they're able to think about these things. They're able to say rare earth minerals. This is something that's going to be very important. It's going to be a critical ingredient in so many of the future technologies, and we're going to make sure that we lock that down in advance. And whatever the next rare earth minerals may be, we may not even really foresee what that may be, but they're surely thinking about this. They're looking for vulnerabilities. They want to patch up their own vulnerabilities. And if they're able to then have the rest of the world sort of at their mercy over this or that, then I think they want to have that opportunity as well. So I think that's really what they're doing here. And, the rest of the world, as I said, is paying attention. And I think they're starting to see, the advantages to this sort of system.
Really interesting to talk. Jonathan Cheng, thank you.
Thanks for having me.